Hi, and welcome back to another episode of What to Expect When You're Arrested. This is your host, Sean Henricksen. I'm a criminal defense lawyer here in San Antonio, Texas, and this show is brought to you by the Sean Henricksen Law Firm, where we help good people like you avoid the devastating consequences of criminal charges. Today, we're going to be looking at a few different topics. We want to look at some legal questions that we get asked all the time, wrap up with some timely updates from things that are happening here in San Antonio. Before we get to that, I do want to mention we do have a free download for you. It's 5 things you should be doing right now if you've been arrested. There's a link down in the show notes, and if you click on that link, we will send that right out to you. And we do also have a link down there for a free consultation. So if you are being charged with a crime here in San Antonio, feel free to click on that link, schedule a consultation with us. We will talk all about your case, let you know how we can help you out, and even kind of map out a game plan for you on how we can attack this case. The first thing that I want to talk about is I get asked a lot of times, do I need a lawyer if it's just a misdemeanor? The short answer to that is absolutely you need a lawyer, even if it's a misdemeanor, especially if you're looking at something like a DWI or family violence cases, because those can have serious consequences with you later on. A lot of people think that a misdemeanor is going to be a lower level offense, which it is. And most people don't actually have to do jail time on misdemeanors, which is also true, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't take it seriously. If you were to end up on probation, if you don't successfully complete probation, or if you pick up another charge, which I know none of us are planning on picking up new charges, but we didn't plan on picking up the charge that you're on probation for either. If that happens, they can revoke your probation and sentence you to jail. And if that happens, then you have to go to the Bexar County Jail to serve that time, and that is not a good place to have to serve time. You absolutely want to avoid that if you want to. And you also don't want this following you around for the rest of your life. I know because when I was younger, in my early 20s, I was charged with a DWI, and I did get a lawyer, but I didn't know that I can get my record cleaned up after that case was over because my case was actually dismissed. And if I would have known that, I could have avoided so much headaches because every time I went to apply for a job, I'd always have to mark off saying I'd been arrested for that DWI, not knowing how it was going to affect me getting that job. When I applied for law school, when I got licensed as an attorney, I had to disclose that, all because I didn't get my record cleaned up. And you want to make sure that you have an attorney who not only is going to help you get your case to a point where it can be cleaned up, but is also going to let you know that you can and when you can, so that that case doesn't follow you around for the rest of your life. In family violence cases, which are mostly misdemeanors, it's even more important that you get an attorney because the consequences on family violence cases, even misdemeanors, is worse than many felony cases. Because if you are found guilty, or if you take a deal and that judge makes that finding that you committed an act of family violence, there are going to be a lot of other consequences. You will never be able to get that taken off of your record. You will never be able to own a gun ever again. If you're ever charged with a family violence case in the future, it's going to be bumped up to a felony. And if you have a child and if there's ever a custody issue in that child, the judge in that custody case is going to look at that finding of family violence when making a decision about whether or not you get custody and how much custody you get. And so even if you are facing a misdemeanor charge, it's very important that you speak with an attorney and find somebody who's going to help you out because we don't want you having all of those negative consequences. Another question that I hear all the time is people who are being charged with different types of family violence cases. Mainly, it's when they see a charge against them where it's like assault bodily injury married or assault bodily injury family member. In either of those situations, I always have people who are contacting me. They're like, I wasn't married to them, or, it was just my roommate. And basically, that's going to have, just to break that down, the first part is just that you are being charged with an assault case. An assault case can be anything from a threat to offensive contact with somebody, or if you either injure or put somebody into pain, any of those is going to be an assault. And what that married or family member part means, it just means that this is going to be a family violence case. It doesn't actually raise the level of offense. So a normal assault is going to be a Class A misdemeanor. Assault against a family member is also still going to be a Class A misdemeanor, but it does bring in all of those other consequences that I spoke about in the last segment about cleaning up your record and owning a gun and custody and things like that. But in Texas, family violence and dating violence actually have very broad meanings. It can be a family member, and that could be somebody related by blood, by marriage, or adoption. It could be somebody that you're dating or have children with, or it can even be just roommates. So if you're in college and you get in a fight with a roommate and the police accuse you of assaulting that roommate, that could have huge consequences on your future later on. And so again, it's important to understand what that means, and it's important to find an attorney who can help you out with that case. Lastly, I want to talk about whether or not you can get a family violence case sealed or expunged in Texas. With most types of cases in Texas, if you complete deferred adjudication, the case gets dismissed and you can actually get your record sealed later on. On family violence cases, that is not possible. If you've got a family violence case, the only way you can clean up your record if they make that finding that you committed an act of family violence is by beating that case and getting it dismissed, or taking it to trial and winning at trial. There are a couple of other situations like pretrial diversion or specialty court that may get your case to a point where you can clean it up even if you can't get your case dismissed, but they're going to require a lot more work out of you and are going to take a lot longer to successfully complete. And you definitely want to talk with your attorney about those options too, to see if they would apply to you and see if they would be good options for you. I also wanted to talk with you about something that I saw in the news earlier this week. San Antonio actually had a decline in homicides. In the first half of 2025, homicides are actually down a little over 12%. And it's important to remember that violent cases in San Antonio or even nationwide are not as common as the media wants you to think. You know, a lot of times if you watch the news, what they're going to show you is, murders and assaults and things like that. They want to show violent crime because that's what gets people's attention and that's what gets people to watch the news. And so if you've heard that if it bleeds, it leads, that is definitely true. When in reality, violent crime is actually down right now throughout the country and including San Antonio. Having said that, it's also important to understand that family violence cases in particular have become very political. And I hear regularly from police that if they get called out, somebody's going to go to jail because the city right now is in a position where they want to take a strong stance against family violence cases. And what that is really leading to is not a decrease in family violence, but that's leading to bad arrests. We see officers arresting the wrong person all the time in family violence cases because when they get there, it's generally a he said, she said type of a situation, and they have a hard time finding out what actually happened because one or both of those parties may not be telling the complete truth. And so we see all the time when somebody is acting in self-defense and defending themselves, and they end up getting arrested when they were the victim and the other person was assaulting them. They were just protecting themselves. We also see lots of situations where the other person didn't do anything, not even in self-defense, but when the police get out there and the other person lies about something, then the police takes them in because the other person was the one that called 911. And so we see a lot of bad arrests. And that's why it's important to understand that when you look at the stats for the amount of arrests, it's not indicative of actually what is going on. When we look at family violence cases in particular here in San Antonio, especially at the misdemeanor level, we are seeing way more than half of those cases getting dismissed because of so many reasons, including bad arrests. I hope that this was helpful information for you. Today we broke down whether misdemeanors require legal help, what assault and bodily injury to a family member really means, and how record sealing works in Texas. We also covered a local headline to underscore the importance of understanding your rights and understanding what is going on in the local area. I appreciate you listening because knowledge is your best defense. And if you or someone you know is dealing with any cases in San Antonio, especially if it's a family violence case, definitely reach out to us here at the Sean Henricksen Law Firm. You can call us at 210-405-6410, or you can click on that link down in the show notes and schedule a consultation directly with us. We would love to talk with you about your case, answer any questions that you have, and let you know how we may be able to help you out. I hope that you have a great day, and I'll see you next week.